We are part 3, the early days of Angela and Tom Trezza. And when we last talked to both of you, we started with the one person that you could think of that was most influential or shaped your lives growing up. And Angela, you said Uncle John, your Uncle John. What kind of role did he play in your life?
Like a father. Better than a father.
And his relationship, he was the...
My mother's brother.
Okay. Did you live close to Uncle John?
Oh, yeah. All the time.
Okay.
In fact, that's where we lived, in my grandmother's house. And he lived up the block. He married a Polish woman in this Dixon Lane. It was like a little lane going up with garages and poor houses, you know, 3 stories high. My mother, we lived on the first. My Uncle Bill and Grandma, and he got married to a Polish woman at the corner of the thing. But he always loved him and my mother was inseparable. Anything wrong, I would call him when I knew my mother was gonna, you know, when my father came home. I used to go in the other room, call him. I think my father's gonna start with my mother. He'd come over the second, no matter what time I called him. But he made sure when we were kids, me and Butch, get in the car, come on, we're going someplace. He took us all over. He built his home for Grandma and Grandpa. That's up in Mayapack. Made them a farm, big farm, and shipped us up there. Always gave us money to go to the candy store. He was very good with my mother. When my mother had nothing, he always left her something on the table without my father seeing it.
What did he do for a living?
Oh, he started from scratch. He worked in the Navy Yard. He was too old for the war, the first World War.
Okay.
That's where my father was in. That's where my mother met him, in the Navy Yard. He was stationed there. And he worked in there. Then he got in, he had money, and he started to buy things, and he was always making money, heads over. But he gave it to all the family. All his brothers worked for him. He went into, bought linoleum that was like, people couldn't buy it. He bought it at a wholesale price, built up a big business, linoleums, tiles, and everything. And he made sure all his brothers were taken care of. And he did. He took care of, he was the family image. Because he came up poor, too.
He was like the father figure that you never had.
That's it.
And to Uncle Butch, too.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. All of us.
And I know he played a major role in, after you met Daddy, on a very, very important night that we're going to hear later on.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll turn to Tom Trezza. When I asked this question to you, you said your sister Martha was like a hero to you?
Not only a hero, as a mother too.
Okay, could you...
Because there were so many children, and she being the oldest sister, she had to help out, and that's the way it was with the girls. They had to help out, but she did the major part of all my sisters.
Now, lead us to the point where you're getting to either get introduced to Angela. How far after you leaving the Navy did you meet Angela Trezza?
I was home for about a year and a half. And do you want to hear my version, or do you want to hear your mother's version?
I want to hear about the time that you left the Navy to right up until the time you were going to meet Angela Trezza.
Well, when I first got out of the Navy, I was seeing another woman out in California. And I came home to find out whether or not it was an infatuation or whether or not I should go back. And once I got back, I knew that it was an infatuation. And it was a good thing that I realized that, because I did marry the person that I really and truly love. But how we met, I always knew her because I used to play horses and he was my bookmaker.
He had my mother arrested.
He meaning who?
Jimmy Rossi,
A father,
her stepfather.
a stepfather. So you
And
you
her
lived,
mother used to take the bets over the phone, and I was one of the customers.
so you lived close to each other.
No.
No, we lived a distance.
Had you just happened to know that this was a bookie that was taking sports bets?
No, my sister was married to my mother-in-law's brother.
My uncle.
Oh, okay.
They met downtown because we lived downtown where they
Okay.
did.
Now, did you know of Tom Trezza?
I met him. I really liked Alec. He was handsome, you know.
The brother.
And I had to go to an engagement party. Rudy was getting engaged. So I said, your handsome brother going to be there? You know, because Uncle Clocky was working and she was afraid to go on the trains alone. So she took me. I was like 16 at the time. And we went to this engagement party. But he was a little stuck up, so I was talking with him. We were doing records or something in the front room when it was their engagement party. But he didn't care, you know. So, but we talked, right? We were, oh, and I went to his house first. And his father's there. His father always loved me since I was a little kid because I made communion with one of the kids that went there. And
So you knew of his family at an early age.
I stopped by with Aunt Helen's. Rudy's girlfriend lived around the corner from where they lived. And I stopped there and his father was eating. And I walked in and I said, hello, Mr. Trezza. And so we're talking with him and he says, I'll send your boyfriend over. I said, my boyfriend? And he said, yeah, Tommy, my boy, I'll send him over. I said, okay, you know. And then he came up later after work, and we would just talk, playing records while the party was going on, but nothing. But that the first date we went on is I was 17 and a half. I broke off with my friend Louis that I was keeping company. He played basketball for St. John University. And I broke off with him, and I had to go to this special party out in Queens. So I said, gee, Aunt Helen, could you call that handsome brother of yours? Maybe I want to go to this party, but my father won't let me travel out there, you know, alone. I said, and I'm scared to go on the trains alone, and my father wouldn't let me, you know. So she didn't have a phone. We had to go out in the street and on a public phone. And she said, Tommy, would you want to take my niece to a party back? He really didn't want to. He didn't want to, but then he called me up and he says, my aunt, you know, and that's how we went to the party. And he went his way, didn't call me till over 2 weeks later.
Well, let's go back to the first party.
Yes.
How far from that party that you met him and was spinning the records to when you were going to
A year.
a year?
Yeah.
So it was a year from the time that...
Yeah, I was like 16 now. I was 17 and a half.
Okay, so let me turn the story over to Tom Trezza.
He really didn't want to go.
Do you remember anything about this first meeting?
Well, first of all, I'd like to clarify one
Okay.
thing over here.
Okay.
She's not explaining the whole situation. My sister Helen was married to her uncle. So that meant
Uncle
after
Clark.
I got married, her grandfather became my grandfather.
Say that again. Wait, go back up.
Yeah, so anyway, my sister Helen's father-in-law became my grandfather. But anyway, in between the time that you were talking about, that I didn't call or anything like that, did I care for her at the time? Not at the time, because I still had a situation out in California. And then what's called, I was going to, we started the date, and I was going to school under the GIB, Bill of Rights at this time.
Before you go there, a whole year passed, you know, from the time that you saw her at that party.
Well, it wasn't a year. It wasn't a year.
Oh, it had to be.
It was less than a year.
So-
It might have been 4 or 5
All
months.
right, well, before you jump,
Yeah.
you know, to the fact you were dating for a while,
Yeah.
tell us about how you asked her out. When did it occur to you that, you know what, I'm attracted to this woman?
No.
I
In
asked
all
Aunt
honesty,
I
my
needed a
sister
date.
Helen called me, and people in the family already, before my sister died, had told everybody the story. She had called me from a booth,
outside
and
in
she
the
said,
street.
"Please, Tom, take her out. You know, she's a good girl, blah, blah, this and that." And I was in the pool room at the time playing cards, and I went to the phone. I says, "Okay,
I wanted
I'll
to
take
go
her
to
out."
this party bed.
So I took her out, and lo and behold, it was supposed to be a George Washington
Right.
birthday party. And when I picked her up, I said, "Where's this place we're going?" She says, "You know something? After all this was said and done, we didn't go to the party.
I said,
We went to the Loews 46 on Newswick Avenue and 46th Street in Brooklyn. And right after the show, we went to
Chinese
the
restaurant.
Chinese restaurant. And we had Chinese food.
You said
And
goodbye.
then it was about 2 weeks after that.
Well, before you go there, did you consider this like a first date? In your mind, was this a first date, or
No,
was
not
this
really.
just
It
like...
was just to satisfy, you know, taking me out that I have an escort.
So this was kind of like a company escort. So
Yeah.
in your mind, this
I
wasn't
wanted
like
to go
your
to
first
this.
date.
Yeah.
Okay, so we still have to get to the point. What was the official first date?
Well, 2 weeks later, he called me up, and I said, "What a surprise, you know." And he said, "I'd like to see you Saturday night."
And she was waiting by the phone for 2 weeks, by the way.
Oh, get lost. And Helen kept going, "Did he call you?" I said, "No, he didn't call me."
And what are you thinking at this
I
point?
said he didn't like me. So it was 2 weeks, and then I was going to dances and roller skating. Because in those days, roller skating was a dance. And they have ladies, you know, they have waltzes, and then the guys have to ask you. Then they have ladies, every third dance that you could ask a guy. But you had to be dressed up. They had to be dressed in a jacket, a tie. But we wore my mother made me some, but I had to hide it from my father. He'd never let me go out with short skirts. And my uncle bought me my first skates, the white ones, and everything. And I used to have to hide that all in the closet. So then when I come in, I would put my skirt over it and then make believe I just came from my girlfriend's. But we went to dances every Wednesday and Saturday night. Then the church had the dances, and that's where Aunt Margaret's brother-in-law, the Diorios, Sonny, rest his soul, and we had a deal. He used to come with his friends, and we had a signal. If a guy asked me out and he was getting too fresh with me, I would dance with the guy, and when I went like this, the guys knew cut in. And they used to come, and you had to, because the priest was watching you. When you tapped the girl, you know, your shoulder, the guy had to move away. Everything was legitimate. No alcohol, just sodas and coffee and tea. And that was it. That's how we met everybody.
Okay, we're going to stop there because I want to have the next session pick up with the official first date
Oh, the second
that
time.
has led to this
Yeah.
marriage of 60 years.